Kids actually learn from co-regulation. They learn as you comfort them how to comfort themselves. Some of that is just the experience, and some of it is watching and learning from you.
To the You Need a Counselor podcast. My name is Julie Johnson. I am the president and founder of Heart and Solutions. Dr. Julie Johnson.
Update.
As Dr. Julie Johnson. Super excited about that. Got my doctorate in behavioral health leadership. So continuing to work on this mental health is for everybody crusade that we're on here. So I'm Dr. Julie Johnson, and I'm the president and founder of Heart and Solutions. We're a counseling agency here in Iowa, spread out all across the state.
And I'm Chrissa. I am the vice president at Heart and Solutions in charge of the behavioral health department. So I work with the program where we go in home and work with kids ages 4 to 18 on different behavioral skills. And we can see them at home, office, school, or telehealth right now as well. And this is our podcast, You Need a Counselor. So our mission is that we are designed for people curious about counseling, but have barriers keeping them from experiencing the benefits of counseling. Our mission is to share stories about counseling, good, bad, and indifferent, and spread the message that everyone can benefit from mental health and behavioral health counseling services.
Yeah, so we post on Sunday nights. So every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central Time, we recommend you batch up your laundry or some other task that you don't want to do. Go ahead and batch up all of that stuff and go ahead and join us on Sunday night. And you can listen to the podcast. That'll give you the entire week to get in touch with your counselor if you haven't seen them in a little bit, or to reach out so that you can get scheduled with a counselor. Okay, so today we have a very special guest that I am extremely excited to hear from in my personal life. I'm very excited about this information. So a lot of times we have mental health counselors and mental health professionals on this show, but we also have a lot of different kinds of coaches on this show because our message is, yes, we all need a counselor. We all need to take care of that mental health component, but we also need other people on our team to really help build that team around us, build that network of experts around us for each of these pieces in our lives. So I am extremely excited to have Meredith Brough on the show today. So I'm going to brag on Meredith a little bit. So Meredith is a mother of 5 children, which just hearing that overwhelms me. I'm a singler. And then, so she's a sleep coach. So Meredith is the owner of Sweet Slumber, which sounds amazing right now after the night I'll tell you about the night I just had, and works with parents such as myself, where sleep is a challenge, and man, do we need sleep to keep our mental health going. Oh my goodness, those days without sleep and those that turn into weeks, that turn into months. Man, those are tough on our mental health care. And so Meredith works with young children, families, infants, to help with those sleep systems and get those sleep routines in place for families. So welcome, Meredith. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I am happy to be here. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely. So Sweet Slumber, you do individual coaching with families, with parents and families, and it can be online, right?
Yeah, I have clients all over the world, so absolutely. I also do digital support. So like I have programs, I have online programs, and I have workshops. So there's lots of different ways to work with me. But I love the one-on-one coaching. It's really nice to connect with people and give them those customized plans.
Awesome. Absolutely. And your podcast is also called the Sweet Slumber podcast. So being able to log on, listen to the Sweet Slumber podcast, I think that's one I'm going to need for myself, maybe to get going on that. So tell us more about Sweet Slumber. What is it that you see families going through as challenges? And then how do you help them kind of cope with those things, put those systems in place?
So I am a little unique considering I have a really extensive background with childcare. So I used to be a nanny and I worked in preschool, I worked in the schools, and I had my own daycare for several years. So I feel very in tune to children and their needs. And when I started my business, I'd actually been helping families for like 15 years with sleep, just on the side. And it was just a little hobby. But I realized the impact one day. I was like, okay, this could be life-changing. It's kind of a big deal. I think I should do this full time. And when I started my business, I didn't realize that there was trainings and people in business already doing it. So I kind of reinvented the wheel. And now I look back at that as an advantage because of my background with children and knowing them. I created my own approach, my own methods, and that really sets me apart. And not just because I want to be different. It's because what I offer is peaceful. I teach parents how to cooperate and work with their children and support them. And a lot of the things that I teach, I actually didn't have scientific backing to. In the beginning, it was like, this is just my intuition. And the moms would say, yeah, I know, it feels right to me too. And then later, in the last couple of years, I found all of this evidence that backs up what I teach for optimal development, for building stress resiliency, for secure attachments, for all these things that you guys would absolutely be fans of. And so I'm really excited that there is scientific backing, but it's a very slow process to get people on board because they're used to conventional methods that include crying and a little bit of force. A lot of times it's, I'm ready for sleep, so you're ready for sleep. Where I actually try to work with children. I teach them some things about feeling safe and secure on their own first. And then we use methods that are more subtle and gradual and slow moving, which doesn't have to be slow if you have a pretty easygoing kid. It can be, 4 days. But most of the clients I work with they have challenging kids or really sensitive kids. And so that's become my forte. And there's a lot of people out there who look for answers and can't find them because all the methods are geared towards really easygoing kids. They cry for a couple of minutes and they're fine. Where my clients, the kids would cry for hours and hours and vomit, and it would go on for weeks, and then they'd realize it wasn't working. And so it's really cool because what I teach works for all temperaments. But it's just amazing for these families who have a really hard time finding solutions.
Yeah, I love what you're saying about secure attachment, and I love what you're saying about, that those situations that we've been kind of taught. I know, like when I was pregnant, and then when my daughter was born, people would say like, close the door and don't listen to the crying. Like, just close the door and like let them cry for as long. And I just couldn't do it. And then I felt like such a failure. I was like, oh my God. So you know what, baby showers, they'll have those little like, what advice do you have, for the new parents? And I remember one of them was like, put them in the crib, close the door, never go back in there. And I was like, okay, maybe I should do that. And my daughter would cry and I would go back in there. And I just couldn't do it. And I felt like such a failure not being able to do that. But oh my gosh, I need her to know that if she needs something, even if it's just security, even if it's just, that reassurance, I want her to know that she can ask for that and that I will do that, and that I will be there no matter what time it is, but I think that, conventional cry it out methods, they can be very traumatizing for the parent and the child. But there's this expectation sometimes that like, that's what you do. And that's the only way you're ever going to get them to sleep. And so coming from this background, that was very challenging for me to go, I feel traumatized by leaving her in there and hearing her cry all the time.
Yes. And I hate that there's that pressure of you're a failure if you can't do it. Here it is, you listening to your intuition, trying to be in tune to your child, which is how you create a secure attachment, right? Being in tune and responding in the way that that child needs and feeling like you understand and care. There's so much evidence now showing that being responsive and teaching them to be secure and trusting and meeting their needs is exactly the way to get them to develop optimally in every single way. And it even helps with brain development. But like just the fact that you could support your kids' mental health this way, it's so worth it. I try not to focus too much on the what's bad about cry it out, what's bad about fervor, because I know, again, there are some temperaments that can handle it and just cry for a couple minutes and they're fine. And I also know that kids can probably repair the damage, or parents can. They probably can repair damage that's done. But my approach is more like, well, why don't we just do it the right way the first time? And then it's going to be lasting too, because we're actually teaching them skills. One of the problems is that a lot of children can't just fall asleep on their own because they're alone. They can't just cry themselves to sleep, which is sad too. They actually need someone to show them how to fall asleep. And so that's the other thing I focus on is, well, let's actually teach them this. And so I have like tricky methods that teach them to fall asleep, basically waiting for you to come back. That's kind of the premise behind all of my methods, is that they trust you so much, they relax, they know you're coming, and they fall asleep waiting, whether it's a 1-month-old or a 6-year-old. It's very similar. And I have 7 different methods for how to do that, depending on their temperament. It's really cool. I love it.
That is cool.
So you're kind of reframing that from, I'm leaving now and your only option is fall asleep, to I'm leaving now for a period of time and I will be back to check on you. You are safe, and I am going to make sure that you're safe because I am going to come back.
There's parents out there now who want to co-sleep and they want to be very attached and they don't even worry about the independent side of things. And so I actually work with all families that co-sleep too, because some kids are not sleeping well in mom's bed. Mom's not sleeping well. And I'm just like, you know what? I've got all these different I've got all these different options for you. I can teach you whatever you need. So if you just want to help your child sleep a little better or optimize naps or help them sleep a little later, whatever it is, it's just important to help parents feel supported in whatever matters to them, and also help them know that whatever they believe in is right for their family. So that's another piece of this. I just brought that up because not everyone's into the independent sleep side of things.
Absolutely. And there still is a stigma, though. I mean, we talk about stigma in mental health. I think there is still a stigma against co-sleepers. So in my family, we're co-sleepers. And I still feel that stigma on, even when I say that, right? Because my kid's 5, like she's not a little baby. And, when she, in her first year, I was so afraid to let her fall asleep on me, or, for me to fall asleep with her on me. And so I slept on her floor, and she slept in the crib for that first year. But as soon as we were a year in, I was like, okay, we're just sleeping. And we still do it. And we've kind of gone through some challenges with that. Like, man, should we be pressing harder, right? Should we be trying to do training so that she's in her own bed, all the time? And certain nights, like last night, when I wake up and I go, what is hitting me in the head? And it's her feet, because she's turned herself around and is kicking me in the head the whole night. On those days I go, man, maybe we should, but at the same time, when I think about that, I've got some challenges with that, right? Like, I've got some fears about, like, is she safe and things like that on my end. And I know that I need to work out. And so I know that on either side of it, for families, there's always going to be that. And especially if there are 2 people co-parenting, each parent is likely to have a different opinion on what to do. And each side of the family is going to have a different opinion on what to do. And I think there still is some stigma. So I like that, you're out there telling people whatever you guys are doing, if it's working, then great. If it's not working, then those are the things that we'll tweak. If everybody's tired in the morning and grouchy or things like that.
There's 2 different parties out there. There's I really want to help the world sleep better. And so everyone needs independent sleep. And of course, part of that comes from SIDS guidelines. Safe sleeping is important. Then there's the other people who are like, co-sleeping, attachment, everyone else is wrong. I don't know why we can't be more in the middle of, like, if that works for you and if that works for you. But I'm definitely in the middle. I didn't start out that way because of safe sleep guidelines. I used to be pretty passionate about, everyone needs to put their kids in their beds. But the more research and the more exposure I've had to other cultures, since I work with people all over the world, it just opened my eyes that there are safe ways to co-sleep. But I think the experience that I have with the challenging kids has been the main reason that I've turned over to the safe co-sleeping side. Because if my clients did not co-sleep, their mental health would be destroyed. They absolutely are saving themselves from being checked into a hospital when they co-sleep. And so I'm actually more passionate about it than I was before against it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. There's such different sides, and it feels like, everybody's got a strong opinion on what to do. But I love that you're working with those families individually on their individual goals. And it doesn't have to be just nighttime sleep then, right? So naps, nap time schedule, things like that are all things that you focus on then, right, in your individual coaching.
Yeah. Well, and that's important too, because all aspects of sleep make us exhausted when they're not working, So like some of my clients will just struggle with the earliest mornings, like starting their day at 4. It's so brutal. And some people are having wakeful periods in the middle of the night with their child. And then there's people who seriously sit and hold their kids to nap all day long. And they come to me saying, I need to function. I need to be able to put my child down. And so it's just really important for people out there, whether or not they have a child, whether or not they know what it's like, to just realize that this can be really hard and that parents need support and understanding and compassion. And there's help, there's hope. I have lots of different tools for people. And I'm so excited when people find me and they find what I teach, because another piece is that I really focus on nature, but I go really deep. I have a friend who kind of supports me, who's a doctor in training, a sleep doctor in training, and she looks through research and she helps me understand the why. And she actually just told me a couple of days ago that there are some experts out there who are kind of taking a second look at SIDS guidelines because they're so extreme. And I actually believe that they're extreme because they have to make things as safe as possible for the most extreme conditions. Does that make sense? So like, for example, a lot of the unsafe co-sleeping happens when people are intoxicated or on drugs. The most problematic situation is when you're in a recliner or you're co-sleeping on a couch because they suffocate in that thing that you're sleeping on. So I guess there's some doctors or scientists out there who are kind of like looking at things again saying, this is pretty extreme. Can we maybe make some adjustments? Because that's actually one of the reasons I have a job. They cause a lot of anxiety. Those rules do, like you feeling like I can't put my child alone because they're going to stop breathing because I'm not there. You know what I mean? They cause anxiety, but then also they cause kids to sleep super lightly, which is one of the reasons for SIDS guidelines. The deeper the sleep, the easier it is for them to stop breathing. So anyways, it's complex. And I have a workshop about that I sell, about navigating safe guidelines, because it can be really tricky and it doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah, when I was pregnant with my daughter, we went to a SIDS training and I made my in-laws come with us because she was going to be sleeping at their house a lot, and they scared us to death. We were so scared. They had pictures of babies who would succumb to SIDS, like pictures of them with birth dates and passing dates. And we were like, oh my gosh, this is awful. And it really scared me. And so, that year of sleeping on her floor while she slept in the crib. And then after that, moving into the bed, but just always checking her, like, are you breathing, right? Are you okay? And when she was next to me, or when we were nursing, up until like 2.5 years old, I knew she was okay, because I knew she was right there. And so, and that allowed me to sleep at that time. But it is so difficult to navigate those things. And to kind of come up with what works for everybody in the family, especially when you've got more than one child and, one child is keeping up the other child. And then, one spouse needs to get up earlier or later. It's very complex. So for children who are co-sleeping maybe, and then there's a desire to move into independent sleep, what kinds of things would you recommend there?
So I usually recommend helping the child play in their rooms and feel very comfortable there, and then starting them out with naps in their room. And that could be nice for mom too, because you're not used to it, I am very, very big on baby steps, which makes so much sense. If people would think about this more as how we reach our goals. Mm-hmm. So we make permanent changes. So they're even better. Baby steps are even better for kids because they get overstimulated and stressed out so easily. Change can be really traumatizing. So my approach to co-sleeping is kind to mom and baby because I don't want them to make a change overnight. I just want them to keep pushing back the goal. So if your child always sleeps in your bed, you start out by having bedtime routine in the bedroom. And they can fall asleep and go back to sleep in your room. It's fine. The next step would be, let's get them to sleep the first period of the night. Next time they wake up, you bring them back to your bed and you just keep extending that. But usually there's some teaching involved too, because that might be a lot of work. You may have to work so hard if your child's still waking up often at night. And so the tools that I give families for teaching building security and also the independent sleep side will help extend that, the period. Instead of it being 8 to 11, we're going to get that out to 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 in the morning. And it gets easier and easier to keep your child in their bed. So it's nice though, because it takes time. And so you kind of get used to them not being with you gradually, which everybody loves.
Wonderful. Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about that research that's kind of backing up what you're doing. So it sounds like you were doing some things kind of like anecdotally, right? And like, I've seen this work, I know that this works. And then now you've got this research backing you up. So tell us a little bit more about that. Because a lot of people like to work with somebody who is using those evidence-based practices. And it sounds like you are.
Yeah. Even though it was backwards, and now I have the evidence. It's still really exciting. I love it. Yeah, and I actually have conversations with people who will say that the crying methods are research-backed, and that always confuses me because I'm thinking, are you talking about the studies that prove it's not bad? Because they're not studying enough kids. They're not studying all these different temperaments. And that is something I'm really hoping to change with my friend who's studying to be a sleep doctor. We're planning already that we'll do studies in the future. Cool. So what we have found is, well, the first thing I found was evidence backing up the security in the room. So I was doing that. I was seeing that be really successful for kids, really helping them sleep better, connecting sleep cycles on their own because they're not scared of the room. They're not scared to be alone. And then I found a couple of articles from pediatric psychiatrists, I guess, and they were recommending this. I was like, yes. And then later on, I started finding articles from psychology.com, I think it is, or Psychology Today, I can't remember, where they were talking about what they didn't like about crying methods. And for me, it was just finding studies and information about how to support kids. And so I started finding information about the security piece, being responsive, and how those benefit kids, like I mentioned earlier, helping them with stress resiliency, helping them develop optimally, helping them connect with people. And then started finding more research backing up, oh, this is my favorite, that children actually cannot comfort themselves until they're 4 or 5 years old. And that as a baby, they're first starting to develop the self-regulation. And it takes at least 4 or 5 years for their brains to even be ready to cope or to self-soothe. That term self-soothe is really common in the sleep world. And they're talking about kids falling asleep on their own or going back to sleep in the night. But the real meaning of self-soothe is being able to regulate your emotions. And I think that is the number one thing that parents don't know about, because they're being told, put your child in the bed, shut the door, they'll learn to work it out on their own. Mm-hmm. But that's not true. If they're very easygoing kids, they're the ones who are going to suck their thumb or look around the room and just doze off because they're not bothered. They're fine. They're not feeling like I'm abandoned. They're not feeling scared. They know how to fall asleep. So they're fine. Like I said, I'm not that worried about those kids because they're fine. But there's a huge number of children out there who are sensitive, who can't even fall asleep unless they're held. They can't relax unless they're held, or they're too hyper to calm down and they'll just stay awake for hours. You know what I mean? And so I love that piece of information. I feel like it's really important. And so I've found a whole bunch of articles that teach parents how to help their kids learn to regulate their emotions and how to support them. And my favorite thing about that is that kids actually learn from co-regulation. They learn as you comfort them how to comfort themselves. Some of that is just the experience, and some of it is watching and learning from you. So that's, sorry if I went on a tangent, but it's so important for parents to know. You have to respond all night long to your child because they don't know how to calm down and they don't know how to feel better if they're like sick or teething or in pain. It's a pretty big deal.
Well, it is interesting because, like you said, parents are taught that right away, like from when they're born, like, oh, they'll calm themselves down. So I've never even heard like, oh, they don't know how to do that till they're 4 or 5 years old. So that's interesting.
I know.
Yeah.
I write articles. Sometimes it's on my blog. Sometimes it's for companies. I'm a what do you call it? A contributor to Brains Magazine.
Oh, cool.
And I write articles about that sort of thing because it just needs to get out there. Schools know about it. I find articles from elementary schools and school districts, preschool, they know about it, but people don't know that about babies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, being able to like sleep is one of those things kind of like breathing, right? Like it feels like something we wouldn't have to teach, but in counseling, we're teaching breathing all the time. And it's something that a lot of times adults will come in and be like, I never knew how to effectively breathe. And it's something that we think we don't have to teach, but we do. And like eating is the same thing, I mean, you wouldn't think you have to teach about eating, but you do. And sleep is that same way. It's so important to our functioning, but nobody is, or not nobody, because you are, but it's not as common to have people specifically teaching that, right? Because it feels in the same way like breathing, it feels like, well, that's just a natural thing to do, but it's such a hard thing to do if we're not taught how to do it. And so, yeah, for a small child, not being taught how to do that, not being taught how to calm themselves down or soothe themselves, it's trial and error, which is the longest way to learn anything, and the most challenging way to learn anything. And so, as their parents, as their guardians, if we know how to, if we get to do the trial and error part with our fully functioning cognitive brains, that we can do that process for them, and we can learn what does work for our own children or for the children that we're caretaking. Then we can help them learn how to do that themselves. But we got to be that bridge for that, and be able to, to learn it first, and then we can teach it to them, right? So my daughter has a number of breathing techniques that she will do now by herself, that she'll initiate. But she didn't start doing that by herself, right? We would do it when she was calm, and when she would get upset, I would always say, "Do you need help calming down?" Because even at 2 and at 3, she knew if she wanted to calm down or not. And if she didn't want to, me trying to help her calm down was not going to be useful. So I just keep asking her, do you want help calming down? And eventually she would want help calming down. And then we would go through that process together. But it was an active process of teaching her those things, and of me learning what works for her and what doesn't work for her. And sleep is the same way. And I think that we have a tendency to think of babies as like not full people, but babies have a full range of emotion. They have, and our toddlers, they have a full range of emotions and emotional needs, just like an adult does. And so like, if I am checked into like one of those haunted bed and breakfasts and I'm like on edge, like, am I going to sleep well by myself in that hotel? Like, no. And so as an adult, I have that same thing. If I don't feel safe where I am, and I mean, I'm sure other adults have had this experience where you like check into an Airbnb or a hotel and it's creepy and you get a weird sense in there, right? And so, and then we just don't sleep as well. So this idea of creating the safe space, and doing things in that space so that the child does feel comfortable and doesn't feel that fear, anxiety being in the space, I think is so important. And then it does have so much to do with the relationship, the trust that's being built between the child and the parent or the guardian, that, yeah, I know that if I express a need to you, that you are a person who's going to respond to that need and is going to try to help me meet that need. And that's such important communication, and it happens non-verbally for the first, 2-3 years of that child's life. And I thought it was so interesting what you were talking about cultural differences too, because, I was I was born in Korea, and in Korea, you sleep on your mom's back. Like everybody sleeps on the floor, you sleep on your mom's back. And so for the first year of life, that's what I did, right? And so these cultural pieces definitely come into play as well, because I'm raising a daughter in the Midwest of the United States. That's totally different than raising the same child in Korea, right? The expectation on sleep is so different.
Yeah. But what's amazing is that now we know from science all these hormones that are produced when you are in contact with someone, when you're calming yourself, the way you breathe, and there's different calming hormones that are released when we're falling asleep because we've had enough physical activity that day. It's just so amazing to learn all the whys. But I also love learning that cultures were in tune and following intuition, because that's like a really big thing that I teach parents is, like we kind of talked about earlier, the way that you're responding to your child is never wrong. You are not a failure. You should be applauded because you're in tune to your child, you're in tune to your mothering instincts, and you're doing something that works for you and for your child. And nobody else is in tune to your child. Nobody else knows what they need. There's a lot of pressure, though, from outside people or like family who thinks they know better. And so you could absolutely fall into that trap of I'm a failure. It's so hard. It's so hard. I totally took us off topic. I love everything that you were saying. Everything that you were saying. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we're off topic at all. I love it. I think that, there is so much pressure, and so even just, working with a coach like you to do sleep training or not to do sleep training even, but just to work on those pieces of like, okay, this is how I feel most comfortable, like working with my child, and how that works in our house. And even just being able to have that validation from an expert in the field, to be able to have that validation that like it is okay to do that, right? Like that if your 5-year-old sleeps in your bed most of the time, like it's okay. Like she's not gonna be 25 and doing that, that's always my thing. I'm like, eventually she's just gonna not sleep in there. And all the things that I worried about when she was younger, like she used to suck these two thumbs like this, or these two fingers like this all the time. And I would go, oh my gosh, like she's gonna do that forever. How do I stop that? And then one day she just stopped doing it, right? She doesn't do it now at the age of 5, she just stopped doing it. And so it was, looking back on that and going, man, I worried a lot about, how do I stop her from doing that? She's gonna ruin her teeth and she's gonna do all of that. And it was fine. She naturally stopped doing that and it was fine. And so, I think a lot of that is that validation that you're offering of, it is okay as long as it is working for you, and if it's not, then yes, let's make those adjustments. But if it is okay.
Well, I also think, because it's kind of related to what you're saying, it's important to talk about how sleep quality is really important. Sometimes there's a sleep disorder, and sometimes either one of you is just sleeping really poorly. So that's another reason to reach out for help. But I read at one point that 30% of children who have sleep problems at 1 will continue that into the rest of their lives. And so not everything works out, but it is still important to follow your intuition. And if your intuition tells you at some point when your kid's 1 or 2 to go see a doctor or to get help from someone who's going to support you and be positive about what you're doing, right? And also has an approach that works for your parenting style, go ahead and reach out, because none of us are experts on everything. There's no way, like people will apologize for not knowing something. And I'm like, well, you haven't worked with hundreds or thousands of babies with sleep. Why would you know that? Like, why are we so hard on ourselves for not knowing these things? So there's a place for there's a time and a place for getting help. And there's always a place for following your intuition.
Yeah, absolutely. Having coaches for these, very specific areas of our life, mental health counselor is like if we think about a basketball player, right? They've got coaches for everything. And if we think about a baseball player, they've got a coach for batting and a coach for catching and a coach for third base and first base. And so, your mental health counselor, absolutely. If there's like boundary issues between, yourself and the family members that are putting pressure, if there's anxiety that, the parent is or the guardian is experiencing that are creating these challenges, if there's communication challenges between co-parents in terms of getting needs met there and doing compromise there, absolutely. Mental health counseling is a really great piece to that. But in terms of the sleep process, right, and being able to work on that, it's a totally separate part of that same puzzle. And so being able to bring in a coach that is specifically for sleep, I think is really, really helpful, because they're both going to support each other. And you might start working with a mental health counselor and go, yeah, I feel like my stuff is good, but I still need the information, the sleep information. And that's where, working with a sleep coach is absolutely compatible with all of that, and vice versa.
I love that you said that, because I often send people to therapy, whether that's for postpartum depression or anxiety, or it's for their marriage, it's for parenting, help, support. Like I've gone to therapists with my husband for asking for parenting support, because we couldn't see eye to eye. We couldn't meet in the middle. And I thought we were going to get more like marriage help, but it was definitely like what we needed. We needed someone to be in the middle and help us talk through, and he gave us ideas for parenting. That was really awesome. But I also help people, there's a client right now. I said, you need to send your child to play therapy. He needs this. I can only help so much. Mm-hmm. So we absolutely need the teamwork. And it's such a beautiful blessing that we have so many resources to turn to for all the different answers that people need.
Absolutely. Like you said, no one person is going to be, the everything for you or for your family. So having that network of people who are there to support that specific aspect of your life is so helpful and so needed. I don't depend on my doctor to give me accounting advice, right? And so I don't say like, hey doc, like what should I do about this on my taxes? Like, because that's not their specialty expertise. And so there's a reason we have a doctor and we have an accountant, right? Because they're separately helping our life.
If you don't mind me interrupting, this is a big thing for me, because I don't know why doctors or pediatricians give sleep advice. Like for babies and toddlers. I mean, sure, yeah. They might understand the basics for adult sleep or even a teenager. But when it comes to babies and toddlers, it's so complex, and they never look at temperament. They never talk about emotional regulation. They never help moms feel like they're following their intuition, they're doing a good job. They just make them question themselves, and they, as pretty much across the board, they're advising cry it out or Ferber. So that is definitely, I wish that more of the professionals understood that they aren't specialists in all the areas.
Yeah,
absolutely. It's, and so doing the things that you're doing, reaching out on the podcast, letting people have that information so that they know that, yeah, it's kind of like nutrition, right? How doctors, of course, doctors are wonderful for medical purposes, right? But like nutrition advice, they don't really get a whole lot of education on that while they're getting their becoming doctors, right? And so same thing with sleep hygiene and sleep quality. They're not a specialty, and I had sleep apnea. I was diagnosed with sleep apnea like coming up on 3 years ago. And man, that changed my life. Like going to a sleep specialist, figuring out, I didn't realize I was only sleeping like the equivalent of 2 hours a night, right? Like getting that figured out, that was huge in my life. That made such a difference. And so I've experienced it on that side. And what you do is you do similar, but for children. And so for the child and the family, being able to work out some of those things so that everybody's life can be impacted for the better with better sleep.
Absolutely. Yes, I support 0 to 6 is my specialty. And that's partly because I had my daycare and I worked with young kids. And so that's just where I'm comfortable. And it's been good, because I think most people need help in that age group.
Absolutely. Love that. So, Meredith, what would you say if somebody was on the fence about either starting counseling for themselves or starting sleep coaching for their child or their family? What advice might you give to that person who's on the fence?
So I would say therapy or counseling, I would tell them my story, that it's been a big blessing to me and to my children. I think that everyone should have a therapist. I think that all of us are unwell in some way, and sometimes that comes from your childhood. One thing that I've learned as a mature mother, because my oldest is 22, is that it is normal to have a messed up family. It's normal to have conflict and problems in your family. You're not supposed to have a perfect life. Your kids aren't either. And it's just a normal part of life to have to work through stuff. But we can't do that on our own. It's so important to go to the professionals who have the training. And there's nothing better than getting to vent. That's all I got to say. So when it comes to the sleep coaching side of things, I think that if parents could just understand that, again, like you were saying earlier, sleep is one of the foundational things that children need. And it's absolutely vital. It needs to be high quality. It's something that parents provide for their children, just like with the baby. They can't feed themselves. They can't dress themselves. They can't groom themselves. They can't learn to speak or do very much physically without the modeling. Parents' roles are so important for all of those foundational pieces. And sleep is just another one of them that you're not expected to already know how to do. And not all kids most kids don't learn naturally. And so turn to a sleep expert and make your life easier.
Absolutely. I love that. It's similar to nursing, right? Like feeding our baby, whether it's like breastfeeding or bottle feeding, like there are challenges that come up with that. And it's natural and normal that there are challenges with feeding, with sleeping, with learning to talk, with learning to walk, like toilet training. Oh my gosh. Like these are normal things that are challenging, and we can't be objective about our own kid, So even if we like do all the research, we're reading all the books on how to do the sleeping process, I can't see my kid as anything other than my perfect angel of a child, right? Like I just can't see her objectively. And I can't see her behaviors objectively because she's my kid. And so bringing in a third party, somebody to outside be able to see the full picture and to put the research backing and the information from all of those other people's experiences and apply that to that situation, given that third party view, is so incredibly important. And similar to how counseling, right? We can't see what's on our own back and in our own blind spots. And so, man, counseling, similar things, so important. So I love this. I think this is great. And, as mental health counselors, we come across these kinds of challenges with our clients, and we're not the experts on that. Like, my kid sleeps in my bed with me. Like, I'm not an expert on that at all. And so being able to have other people kind of in our network to go, yeah, if it's a financial thing, go to a financial coach for that piece of it, right? Your mental health part is going to be with us, but if it's a financial coaching thing, there are financial coaches that we work with. If it's a sleep problem thing for your child 0 to 6, we've got a sleep coach, that we can recommend to build up your team around you for those different pieces. So I love that, Meredith. This has been really, really super interesting to hear about what you do. So tell us about how we can find you and how people can connect with you so that they can start sleep coaching for their kiddos.
Thank you. So I have a website where you can find all sorts of resources, whether they are free or my workshops and mini courses that are lower priced. And then I do one-on-one coaching and I have programs. So that's at sweetslumbertime.com. I also have a Facebook group. It's called Successful Sleep. So just look that up. And there's plenty of free resources there and lots of support and lots of parents who understand, which I think is huge. And I'm actually really proud of that group because I have women from more than 100 countries in it. And I am very strict about it being a positive place. And then my podcast you mentioned earlier, the Sweet Slumber podcast. And I'm on social media at Sweet Slumber Time. So just remember Sweet Slumber Time, and you can find my website and my Instagram and my Facebook.
Perfect. Yep. Excellent. And we will link all of those for you guys in the description, so you'll be able to see how to reach out to Meredith to get some sleep coaching.
I am Meredith Brough, and I need a counselor.
Awesome. I'm Dr. Julie Johnson, and I need a sleep coach.
Yes, you do.
I need one. I'm telling you, well, my kid needs one, and I need one. So thank you so much, Meredith. This has been really, really great learning from you and getting to hear about what you do. It's so needed. Is speaking for the new mom population. Very, very important service that you're doing. So thank you for being out there doing that.
You're welcome. I enjoy it. I love it. It's my life. Much like what you guys are doing, right?
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So if you are in Iowa and you want to start mental health counseling or BHIS services, you can call us at 800-531-4236 for Heart and Solutions in any of our 7 locations across Iowa.
Like Julie mentioned at the beginning, we post every Sunday night at 5 p.m. Central Time. So save up that laundry or whatever chore you hate doing and listen to us while you get that done on Sunday nights. And then we can help motivate you to call a counselor or a sleep coach for yourself or for your child that week as well.
Absolutely. And we get people reaching out to us all the time, just asking questions about how do I get connected with a counselor? How do I get, who was that guest you had? And how do I get connected with them? So if you've got questions like that, send them to us on Facebook Messenger, You Need a Counselor Podcast, or you can send us a DM on Instagram at that same name.
So I'm Chrissa.
And I'm Julie Johnson, and we need a counselor.
And so do you.
Bye.
Bye.